Ahorita va a empezar.
I'm gonna talk about COVID, like not that type of forum.
After you got on her for taking your candy pop.
That should have been a learning moment for the CEO.
It should have. I think
She
it
didn't
was.
get it.
I agree that it was.
Oh, you can hear it?
Or it was an opportunity to learn whether it was.
Yeah, she's like, no. See, there's no.
Is everybody aware that the mics are live in the boardroom? Thanks, just checking.
It was good trouble. It was necessary trouble. I have a dream. Now just this. Now just this.
Bishop, Monet, Mary, Vaughn, Tracy Tyson, their director, Brandon, Kaylee, for their service, for us, by my. If you have not yet done so, anyone who does not yet. Additionally, you're not or the same. Please turn. Commissioner Vaughn.
Yes, Commissioner Bandima.
I don't hear.
Do you hear me, Bandima?
Are you on mute?
No, I'm not on mute.
Commissioner Brooks.
Can you hear me now?
Give me one. Services. Okay, I'm gonna start with roll call. I'm gonna start with Commissioner Von.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Present.
Yes, I'm here.
Commissioner Brooks. Commissioner Terry.
Yes.
Commissioner Bennett. Commissioner Reed.
Reed, present.
Commissioner. Is there a motion to? Thank you, Commissioner.
Second, Bundima.
Thank you, Commissioner Von. Thank you,
Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Terry.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
so move Bundima.
Second, Griffin.
Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
It's pronounced Asensio Orozco.
Good evening. Yes, I am here.
Yes, I'm here. My name is Yasmin Blanchard. Hi.
Oh, yes, that would be lovely. Thank you. Let's see. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Zen Gordon, and I'm currently a senior at the Baltimore Polytechnic Institute. It is an honor to get to know you all today. So, as for the remarks, I'd like to start talking a little bit about our first couple of weeks of meeting together. We have come up with a few priorities that we thought about working out throughout this school year, and I would like to share just a few of them. So the first one was to help improve the organization of the school transportation systems, such as possibly the buses or the coaches. But of course, we'll need to work on creating like polls, like a type of surveys to really narrow it down to which specific services that we need to focus on to help improve and get them to arrive on time for the students. The second priority was to advocate really for the increased state funding, such as to help encourage the school construction and type of renovations. Another thing that the state funding could be used for, it was to help have safe, clean, and really drinkable water for our school systems. Another possible way we can use the state funding was just in general to help promote the the school environment to be more comfortable and help really have it really as a nice learning environment for the students if they have any needs. So the third priority was to work on the cafeteria system, such as the cafeteria system to make sure that their ventilation is okay for upcoming winter, especially during these times, the COVID pandemic time. It's necessary that we need to have the ventilation set up. The other thing we could also work on is to make sure that they distribute the lunch to match up to the schedules that are sent on the district websites, as well as to make sure that they satisfy the needs of students, especially with the students with allergies. The fourth priority was to focus on the health and the safety of our students, such as to really to promote sanitation is to bring automatic water faucets as well as the paper towel dispensers and soap dispensers. Another way if that can't work, then possibly we can work on for the push to activate water faucets to have them increase the time so that we can thoroughly wash our hands. The fifth one is the COVID-19 testing. So we want to really help encourage making sure that the testing is more regular for all the staff and students to really help promote a healthier and safe environment for our schools. The final one, as of right now, is the mental health days. So mental health days have been really a thing that's been happening in states such as like Oregon and Illinois. I think Utah as well. And they've also been working on even proposing a bill for the Maryland, I think from, if I remember correctly, Delegate Alonzo Washington. So really to have the mental health days so that students can take time off to really focus on decompressing and making sure that their mindset is all set for the next day. And so it really helps them cool off and get ready for school. And I would say that these are several of the priorities, but of course we'll increase them over time. But these are definitely priorities that we priorities that we want to share with you all today. And thank you all so much for your time.
Much, Mr. Gordon. I am so excited to see what you all are going to do, you and your team. So I'm very proud of you and congratulations again. On behalf of the board, I want to extend the congratulations to all of you. We do look forward to working together with you.
Thank you so much.
You are welcome. Is there a motion to approve the personnel, employment, and payroll report and quasi-judicial matters? I will move to approve that. Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner McFadden. All in favor, Commissioner Bondima,
Yes.
Commissioner Chinya,
Yes.
Commissioner Griffin,
Yes.
Commissioner James,
Yes.
Commissioner McFadden,
Yes.
Commissioner Reed,
Yes.
and I am in favor. That is 7 in favor with 2 absent. I will now turn it over to Dr. Santelises for CEO comments.
Thank you very much, Chair Richardson. It is good to be here this evening, and I'm going to invite Chief Grant Skinner for this evening's PEP agenda. Chief?
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Santelises. Hello, commissioners. First tonight, Kyle Gatchalian, Educational Associate, is appointed Educational Specialist 2 for Specialized Instruction, effective October 27th. Jane Harris, Founding Director at the Kevin Durant Center, is appointed ILED for Secondary Schools, effective November 15th. Noelle Lugay, Manager for School Operations Support, is appointed Director for Student and School Operations Support, effective October 27th. Alexandra Lurse, IEP Team Associate at Dr. Bernard Harris Senior Elementary School, is appointed Interim Assistant Principal at Dr. Bernard Harris, effective October 27th through January 30th, 2022. Karen Starlipper, Assistant Principal at Lakeland Elementary Middle School, is appointed Interim Principal at Utah Marshburn Elementary School, effective November 8th through June 30th, 2022. LaWanda Wilson, Assistant Principal at National Academy Foundation High School, is appointed Interim Principal at Dr. Bernard Harris Senior Elementary School, effective October 27th through June 30th, 2022. And finally, Cora Parson, Executive Assistant to the Chief of Schools, was appointed Interim Special Assistant for the Chief of Schools, effective October 15th through January 15th, 2022. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Grant Skinner. I would, as is our custom, like to read and provide some further context for 2 of our principal appointments this evening. The first, Karen Starlipper prepared for the principal role through 2 years in our principal residency program, supported by new leaders, through which she served as principal resident at 3 elementary middle schools, Commodore John Rogers, Calvin M. Rodwell, and Lakeland, where she then became assistant principal. Principal Starlipper began her career in city schools through the Baltimore City Teaching Residency at the Reach Partnership School as a special educator, school counselor, and district-level curriculum writer. She holds a bachelor's degree from Towson University and a master's degree in education from Loyola University, Maryland. Next, LaWanda R. Wilson has served city schools.
Loyola University, Maryland.
Okay, I just want to remind the public, please make sure your phone is muted. Thank you.
LaWanda R. Wilson has served in city schools for the past 25 years. In addition to classroom experience, Ms. Wilson has administrative experience in elementary, middle, and high school. She was most recently assistant principal at National Academy Foundation School, a 6th through 12th grade school. She was inspired to become an educator after enrolling in a math class for elementary education teachers as an elective. Principal Wilson earned her bachelor's degree in education from the Coppin State University, master's degree in education from Towson University, and her administrative certificate from Morgan State University. Congratulations to both our principal appointees as well as all appointees this evening. Now, last week, I had the opportunity to visit more schools, and I really enjoyed my visit to Forest Park High School. Principal Mazzone took time out of her schedule to walk with me. And one of the highlights, in addition to seeing things really running smoothly and adults, I got to see the very first advisory period across Forest Park High School, which is no small task in a high school. And when I got a chance to talk to students, the feedback even from the first session was it was nice to have a place where we could just talk and share and get to know one another. And I think students really appreciated. I want to shout out Principal Mazzone and her staff for just a wonderful job in really getting that up and running and making it a meaningful time for students. I also want to shout out Mr. Matthew Edelman, who is a special education English teacher at Forest Park High School and a member of our BSLIC community. This is a teacher leadership group that has been funded through the Gates Foundation. And really what we've seen is when these teacher leaders have come together, we are actually seeing increased results in literacy, in reading, in fluency for our secondary students. And so Mr. Edelman had the chance to show me the data chart that was up in his classroom, and he sent me pictures of young people, high school students, who were gathered around the data map in their classroom and were truly interested in owning their own learning. So these were students that weren't afraid of the data. They used the data. They were excited to move. And I think a lot of that is what we're seeing in this fabulous work as part of BSLIC, the Gates funded initiative that's really driving teacher leadership. And so I want to thank Mr. Edelman for inviting me in his classroom. I also want to thank Mr. Rivers and the staff at Frederick Douglass High School that really has started the school year with just a real positive school culture. I had the chance to be part of, to witness, I won't say be part of, their senior inauguration with young people, our seniors, just excited, dressed to the nines. I got to meet a number of seniors who are already engaged in the planning, and it just reinforced those kinds of rituals that our young people missed over the last 20 months. And it was good to hear the laughter. It was good to see some of our community partners. I want to thank Sekou Kwasimu, who was out and greeted me. And it was just a nice example of how Principal Rivers, his team, and the community were coming together to celebrate young people. And then finally, a shout out to Principal Agaro and his early childhood team. I was on the way to the office and was a little tired of adult conversation, so I started my day in the pre-K kindergarten wing, and it was very rejuvenating. As I walked into one of the pre-K rooms, the little boy said, "Ooh, you're here just in time. We're getting ready to do pumpkins." And it was a wonderful, wonderful visit. I got a little hand massage spa with the seeds and the pulp. Although I will say that the pre-K did not have the same enjoyment of the seeds and pumpkin pulp that I did. But I just think these are great examples of how our educators, our school leaders, our communities are coming together on behalf of young people. And you see that, again, some of those rituals and healing kind of ceremonies and practices are really in the everyday interactions that our students have. I also want to give a big thank you to all of the teachers who have taken time to talk with me, speak with me over the last 6 weeks as I visited schools. They have shared with me things that would make their lives easier. They've shared some of the challenges of returning to school. And I want to announce that this week in my video address that I put out each week, I will be announcing some of the shifts and adjustments that we'll be making as a district that we'll be proposing to the board. And a lot of what you're going to hear is the result of really gifted, hardworking teachers who are very reflective of the real ways that we can support their work. So please stay tuned for that. And I thank you for your work and your real reflection and feedback. I would now like to congratulate our own Corporal Betty Covington, who has been named one of Baltimore's 25 Women to Watch in the Baltimore Sun. We are so proud as the founder of Girls Expecting More Success, or GEMS. Corporal Covington really has been mentoring young women in the city and city schools since 2007, while also working with their teachers, social workers, and caregivers. In 2015, GEMS became a nonprofit and expanded to a summer program for girls. I will say this, we have known about Corporal Covington's great work for years. But we are so pleased that she is really getting the recognition that she deserves. We are proud of her, and we thank you for everything, Corporal, that you are doing to help our young women excel. Next, I'm very pleased to announce that City Schools has been selected to participate in the Wallace Foundation's Equity-Centered Pipeline Initiative. City Schools was one of only 8 districts chosen among 43 districts invited to apply. This 5-year endeavor will support our district's capacity to build evidence-based principal pipelines with the goal of developing principals who advance our vision of equity. The 5-year award will total $8.2 million with sub-awards granted to Maryland State Department of Education, Morgan State University, and Towson University. Congratulations to Dr. Tracy L. Durant, Executive Director of Equity, and Ashley Stewart, Executive Director of Talent and Organizational Development, who were the co-leaders for this work. Many thanks to the entire district team who were involved in the proposal development. Also thanks to the team at the Fund for Educational Excellence for their support. And then finally, as we enter the 7th week of asymptomatic testing across the district, I'm pleased to report that our COVID mitigation efforts continue to be effective. After testing nearly 46,000 students last week, prevalence rates remained at just 0.18% for the 2nd week in a row. That's just 18 positive cases for every 10,000 people, an incredibly low rate of infection. I want to congratulate everyone involved in this very complicated process for their dedication and hard work to keep our staff and students safe. As a result of your efforts, City Schools testing program continues to be recognized as a model for effective COVID mitigation across Maryland and the nation. Of course, we will continue to regularly review and improve our procedures based on feedback from employees and families, day-to-day experience in our schools, and ongoing consultation with health experts. We are incredibly excited that just hours ago, it was announced that the CDC approved emergency use of vaccines for children aged 5 to 11, which is going to be a major tool for us as we continue to open schools, keep children safe, and also return to and participate in the kinds of routines that we know are helping our young people heal and re-engage. So good news on that front as well. And Madam Chair, that concludes my remarks for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Santelises. I want to make a correction. In my talking points, I announced that the link to sign up to speak at the legislative hearing on Thursday is up and on the website. There is a technical glitch, and so please please check our website tomorrow when that glitch will be fixed. We'll now hear a fine arts update from Chanel Howard, our coordinator of fine arts.
Chanel, you're muted.
$5 in the mute jar. I think I owe that. Can you all hear me all right?
We can hear you.
Oh, good. Oh, my nerves. Thank you so much for having me today. Yes, sir.
Who holds that? Who holds that mute jar? Where's that mute jar?
It's in the office of TNL. I'll let you know after the meeting, sir. Thank you so much. I will not be before you very long, just enough time to update you all on the R3 work as connected to fine arts for our amazing Baltimore City Public Schools. So here is a list of our agenda items for today. We will be centering the work. We'll share with you our North Star. I will share with you our R3 goals and initiatives for the Arts Initiative, Arts as Healing Initiative, and what our next steps will be in moving forward. Next slide, please. This is a slide everyone is familiar with, and it just helps us to center the work according to the board strategic priorities. Then similar. This is also the slide that we use across the district to help anchor the work that we are completing according to our Reconnect, Restore, and Reimagine, also known as the R3 initiative. Next slide, please. So here's our North Star, and something I'm very proud to share with you. This is what we use in fine arts to anchor the work around what we do. And our purpose is to develop a curriculum that is generative, focusing on large connected themes and problematizes or encourages students and teachers to think critically about themselves, their context in the world we live in, to situate curriculum within the communities we serve, and to build out curriculum that is emergent from students' realities and experiences, and then also to reflect, respond to, empower, and translate our students' lived experiences and contexts into intentional instruction that empowers them to be change makers and activists. So this is work that we are really proud of, and we hope that it shines through all of the work that we produce in fine arts. Next slide, please. Our fine arts R3 goals: to reconnect our school families and community with fine arts strategic plan goals and initiatives, to restore the joy in arts making for our students, and to reimagine what arts opportunities and arts education look like for our students, including learning opportunities for fine arts teachers. Next slide. Restore the joy in arts making for students. What does that look like, you ask? I'm happy to tell you. We are centering our work to include experiential learning opportunities for students that occur both in school and on field trips. We were allocated a one-time ESSER spending opportunity for traditional schools to the tune of the $200 allocation per student based on last year's enrollment. And then we also submitted guidance for principals to help support long-term benefits of one-time spending. And what we tried to make sure that we called out to make it explicit was that this was a significant money source that we had to make a real difference and a real impact on what fine arts could look like for our students long term. So some key aspects of that guidance was to think about equipment. So if there was a principal who wanted to establish a band program, this was a really good opportunity for them to use their allocation to purchase band instruments. And in some cases, it was significant enough to not only purchase band instruments, but to also provide some opportunities around arts experiences for our snickerdoodles. So we are very much appreciative and very proud of our district for making that allocation possible for this school year. Next slide. Reconnecting our school families and community with fine arts strategic plan goals and initiatives. So one of the things that we want to always try to make sure we center our work around is some shared understandings. And this is that all students should have access to yearly sequential standards-based arts instruction with a certified teacher, arts experiences that connect children with their city, experiences that connect their arts learning to other disciplines, and specialized pathways that allow students to study a given art form. These are also the basics for our Fine Arts Strategic Plan, and we are bringing that work forward even in a pandemic. So that's some of the things that I hope to share with you, and hopeful that you will be a part of some of the opportunities that we will have that will occur later on in the school year. So look for that on the way. Next slide, please. To reimagine what arts opportunities and art education look like for our students, including learning opportunities for fine arts teachers. This has looked like over the past year and a half, all of last school year, the portion of the school year prior to that, where we were sent home, we were home for COVID, and then also into this school year, we've had a unique opportunity to rethink really what that could look like. To leverage some of the learning that we had from last school year in a virtual setting. How are we able to pull those things forward so that we could provide more meaningful opportunities for our students and more meaningful opportunities for our arts teachers to reconnect to their students? And so this has looked like instructional boot camps. We've had a really significant opportunity to think about how we offer instrumental music in the district. And one of those things that we try to drill down on is like, while we have and we're pushing for the opportunity for students to specialize in arts disciplines in middle school, and while we're pushing for them to have depth of study opportunities in high school, one thing that is key is to make sure that those students have a broad base of exposure to arts opportunities at the elementary school level. So that's making sure that they have these opportunities so that they have the requisite skills that are required for specialization and then also for depth of study. Those instructional boot camps are based on instruments that we've been pushing through our elementary schools, which is inclusive of ukulele. It's been a lot of fun for our teachers to learn how to play ukulele, as well as them pushing that information onto their students. So we had Robin Gablehausen from University of Maryland, Baltimore County, to come in and do an instructional boot camp with our teachers in August. That was a lot of fun. We also had recorder boot camp with our friends from Macy Publishing, and that included a session called Recorder Two Ways, which featured typical songs that you would play on recorder, but it also featured recorder jazz style. So if you have never heard jazz recorder, you want to make sure you're stopping into some of our elementary school programs to hear them, to hear those performances. Something else that we have been doing has been leveraging the rock star status that we have in Baltimore City Public Schools, our mentoring program. So TLC Mentoring and Teacher Support is a program that is geared towards teachers in their first through third years. And we pair them with a seasoned veteran teacher in Baltimore City Schools who we consider to be rock stars. And they have a laundry list of things that they have to meet in terms of requirement. And one of them, or a few of them really, is one, they have to have good rapport with their students, because that's what we're hoping all of our teachers have. They also have to be recommended by their peer and principals. They have to have 5 to 7 years of experience, and they have to have successful SLOs that they have submitted. The mentoring program is year round. It's all 10 months thereabouts for the school year. And we've gotten really good comments from our participants as well as the mentors about the work that they are doing. Something else that we're doing is leveraging district support for the arts schools. So as you may know, we have about 6 schools in the district that have some type of designation as a for the arts school. So not just Baltimore School for the Arts, but schools like Booker T. Washington Middle School for the Arts, and then also Augusta Fell Savage Institute for Visual Art. So what we've been trying to do has been strategic about what we could offer from a district level to help support those schools and really being innovative about how we think about what support looks like. So while the good book does tell us that money answers all things, so we know that that's given, that there can be some funding that could be extended to those schools, but what else? And how can we be strategic about what we already have access to be supportive of those schools? So I'll talk to you a little bit more about that. And then also we've been endeavoring to look at short-term certifications in fine arts to establish technology pathways in selected schools. So we'll have a little bit more conversation about that later. We just wanted to make sure that we brought this up as a conversation point for today. And then also Arts as Healing Initiative. Oh, I'm sorry. Arts as Healing Initiative. We'll be talking a little bit more about that. Next slide. Augusta Fell Savage, this is what our support is looking like for this school currently. So district level support and strategic assessment for visual arts courses. Mentoring for visual arts teachers. So I have been leveraging my fine arts specialist. Thank you so much, Dr. Santelises and members of the board for making sure that we have that extra layer of support for our teachers. So my specialist has been going into, Jessica Chambers is her name. She's been going into Augusta Fell Savage to provide mentoring for those visual arts teachers there as well. We're working on assessing where district level support pushing needs to happen in terms of materials and supplies to support depth of study opportunities, which is specifically important for a school that is an institute for the visual arts. So we want to make sure that their battery of courses for the visual arts reflect an institute of visual art. We want to make sure that the curriculum that we're pushing through there, we want to make sure that our support that we're pushing through there for the curriculum is also materials based, which is pretty important for a visual arts institute. And then also developing specific professional development for those teachers as well. Next slide. So I'm gonna, there's a mistake on this slide. I do apologize. This slide should read that this is just short-term certification opportunities conversations that we're having regarding connection. So I do apologize for that oversight. Next slide, please. Our Arts as Healing initiative, we are conceptualizing and defining arts as healing across the district. So what is that really? We're talking about ways that we're not only going to focus in on our students, but also are we providing enough emphasis on making sure that our teachers are all right in this specific space that we are in. And so we're thinking about how arts as healing can be leveraged across the district. So what does professional development look like for teachers, where we're not getting teachers in other contents to be arts teachers, but we are getting them to lean into those opportunities to where it makes sense to leverage maybe an art activity that helps to enhance what they're doing. So this also connects to our strategic plan work in terms of bringing forth arts integration into some of the other subjects. So we're still taking a look at what those initiative goals are going to be. And then audiences, this is not just for students, as we mentioned, but it's also geared towards teachers and principals to make sure that we are providing a 3-tier instructional model, which is the introduction of arts as healing overall, and then implementation for some of the things that we'll talk about. Professional development that we've also had the opportunity to extend to our community has been therapeutic arts making that has been centered by the International Arts and Minds Lab at Johns Hopkins University. So we're very grateful to our partners in the work, Doctors Karen Alexander and Susan Maximin, from the Arts and Minds Lab who have really been helping us ground what we're doing. And more information we'll have about that. So the implementation, and then we'll also be doing a reflection. And we anticipate that Arts as Healing will not just be an initiative for this year, but in years to come, as we believe that COVID will be with us for a while. So as long as we have COVID, and as long as we are experiencing the effects of COVID on our community, we believe that Arts as Healing will be an initiative that will be supported and needed. Next slide. More to come. It's instrumental. We have an instrumental music playing, and we are so excited that we have been able to at least formalize a plan that speaks specifically to those requisite skills that are needed in elementary school, as well as the development of more instrumental focused programs. And so we're not trying to lean out of vocal programs in elementary school. We're just centering more around the thought that your voice is an instrument as well. And then pushing that all the way through to specialization in middle school. So we'll be happy to update that, and I want to let the board know that we do have a written update that's also due this school year, and we'll make sure that some of these things are completely fleshed out for you in that. And then also curriculum revisions. Curriculum is the thing that we talk about all the time, because as our students change, our curriculum should be changing to make sure it suits their needs. So we'll be setting the stage for specialization in middle grades and depth of study opportunities in high school, and then also bringing us closer to compliance to our COMAR standards for fine arts instruction. Next slide. If you need to contact me at all, my information is here. There's my email address that's located down there also. My director of World and Classical Languages, Social Studies, and Fine Arts, Miss Kelly Gonzalez, and I think that she's here too on the call as well. So I am happy to answer any questions that you may have, and then also I hope that you have enjoyed the visual art that was shared with you. And this is all work from our amazing snickerdoodles at Baltimore City Public Schools. Commissioner Bondima, I see your hand.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Howard. This was wonderful. I enjoyed listening to you. And I have a comment and a question. The first question is, when you receive funding for instruments for the music, are the students allowed to take those instruments home, or do they have to remain at the school?
So it depends. In elementary school, for the most part, those are classroom sets of instruments. So there's intended for them to be a shared experience with their peers. So in that particular case, which is mostly general music, no ma'am, those instruments do not go home.
Okay.
But where students have the opportunity to specialize, like in band and orchestra, in middle school and high school, we do have an instrument loan process, so where those instruments can go home with the kids.
Oh, thank you. And I have one more comment or question.
Yes,
There's a
ma'am.
lot of arts and going on around Baltimore City and the surrounding areas, and I'm sure Commissioner McFadden will probably have some of the answers and know some of the answers with you, Chanel. I'm
Yes,
sorry.
ma'am. It's all right.
I know that from experience that programs that occur at the Hippodrome, the Center Stage, Everyman's Theater, Baltimore Museum, Walters Art, Alvin Ailey, School of Rock, all of those places have programs, small programs, large programs, internships that some of your kids might already be involved in. I don't know, but I highly recommend that you might check with the board members or even myself, who know people on the boards at many of these places who can assist us in the school system to get our kids in some of these programs and to assist you in that hard work that you're doing.
Commissioner Bondima, I appreciate you calling those out. And I always look forward to making new friends. So please, if you have someone that you'd like to connect me with, I welcome those. And some of those places that you mentioned, we do have connections with. So with the ESSER spending packet that was sent out to principals, we have some partners, small and larger partners, where they told us, you know, how they could support that
Right.
spending and helping to provide arts opportunities for our snickerdoodles.
Right.
So we're sending that out.
Snickerdoodles, I like that.
Yeah. And we're looking to provide a newer iteration because we have some other opportunities that have been available. So we'll make those available to principals as well. But I look forward to making friends. So thank
Okay.
you.
You got it. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. I saw that there were two other hands, I think.
So, okay, Chanel, we have a hand from the public. I just want Miss Trueheart, who I miss you. I just want to say that. I want you to know that we're getting the answers to your question, and we'll get a staff member to respond to you directly in the chat. Okay, but Commissioner McFadden also has some questions as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll leave the beautiful artwork to our chair to talk about, because she has some really cool ideas about how we can continue to see this student display as often as we possibly can. So Chanel, I appreciate the presentation, and thank you for reminding us that we're going to receive some written information at some point this year to outline things a little bit more concretely. I have a specific question though about teachers. So perhaps this can come in that written update. Where are we with ensuring that there are fine arts? What do our fine arts teacher numbers look like? That usually comes to us, so I'm sure you'll probably include that in the written. I'm interested in knowing that information. So if it is, we don't have to talk about it now.
Yes, sir. It's we're actually scrubbing data down to make sure that it's an accurate reflection of where we are. And I don't think you will be disappointed, but yes, sir, it is coming to you.
That's good to hear. But then also, are we retaining, with all of the development that we've kind of seen outlined tonight, and I'm sure we'll hear more about that soon to come, but are we retaining, this could be another question addressed in that written report, are we retaining quality teachers, quality fine arts teachers, as a result of the investment that we're providing within professional development opportunities, mentorship opportunities, because we want those folks with our children. So I'm curious to know, what does retention look like for our good teachers, for our good fine arts teachers?
Yes, sir. I'd appreciate the opportunity to look more into that, so I can give you an answer that is based on the data, not what I think. So I can include that in our written update, sir.
I appreciate that. And then also I'm thinking, like, with our R3 funds, with the ESSER dollars, what type of guidance are we providing to school administrations, or to just city schools administration in general, to make sure that we're using those funds in a way that doesn't necessarily supplant fine arts teachers, right? So we might have partners, we might have additional programs, but are we providing that guidance to schools? If we have a fine arts plan that's ensuring that we have certified fine arts teachers in schools, are we holding schools and staff accountable and making sure that we're not using those funds to supplant that certified teaching requirement that we're expecting schools to still have, if I'm making sense?
Yes, sir. And I think that the answer it's not just in the guidance, it's not just in the guidance that we provided for ESSER spending. It's a comprehensive plan that we've been systematically working on across the district over the last few years to make sure that that doesn't happen. So one of the things is to make sure that our schools are meeting the budget guidance that we have set out. And so as you may remember, that is it's ratio based. So it's moving from the 0.5 that it was, regardless of how many students you had in your building, to, you know, if you have X to X number of students, this is the number of fine arts teachers that you have to have. So principals are not allowed to go under that. So they can always staff up, but they're not allowed to fall under that guidance. Very few exceptions, I'll say. So schools that feel like they need to be under the guidance, they have to apply, they have to ask for a waiver. and I don't want to be too loose in my conversation, Commissioner, but to my understanding in the budget collaboratives, you have to be very compelling with your story for that to happen. So this has been something that we have held firmly to in teaching and learning, and most of our principals are holding. Are adhering to the budget guidance that we have set. So there's that. In addition to the funding guidelines that we set forth for ESSER spending, specifically speaking to the $200 allocation per pupil based on last year's enrollment. You're not going to be able to swap out of that, and principals have to submit a spending plan, which is, I think, due tomorrow. So principals have to submit that to the district, and we're taking a look at that line by line and precept by precept to make sure that spending, one, is not looking to supplant teachers, and then two, also that spending is the plan for spending is in line with arts and athletics. So you couldn't have a science coach on your arts and athletics spending plan. In addition, the idea behind the ESSER spending was to allow principals more leverage and leeway to be able to increase the arts opportunities that they have in their building. So our team in grants has also been working with principals to say, hey, look, if you were staffing up, so not supplanting, but staffing up, and if your idea was to staff up in your buildings, here's a way that you can use that using this one-time allocation, and then furthering for using concentrations of poverty. So it's not just in teaching and learning, sir. It's a comprehensive effort that we've been applying across the district and across multiple departments to make sure that supplanting is not an issue to the best of our ability.
Right. I really appreciate that response, Chanel. And finally, I don't want to take up too much time, but I want to have an update around where we are as far as woodwind instrument and playing within city schools. Singing, of course, and playing woodwind instruments. I know that other school systems have invested in PPE to still allow students and teachers to play. I've heard from some students at some schools and some teachers, and it varies. Some schools have been doing some exploratory things. Some schools have not been. Students haven't been singing or playing woodwind instruments. So do you have an update around that in any way? What is the guidance around that? I know that we have it. I haven't necessarily seen it, which is why I'm asking tonight.
Yeah, no worries, sir. We just yesterday in Chief Davis's updates, we sent an updated guidance, which is basically we are returning to indoor rehearsals in both singing and instrument playing, with some caveats in place. So schools that have 3 layers of mitigation strategy, which is inclusive of masking is number one. The second one is making sure that they have air scrubbers or purifiers that were installed by facilities in the room. And then for wind instruments is making sure that they have PPE for those, which is inclusive of bell covers and proper masks for that. And the guidance also said, like, the district did purchase bell covers and singers masks and musicians masks for majority high schools and some middle schools. So where we knew that there was a concentrated program, if you will. So not just like the instruction that happens in general music, sir, but singing as a vocation, if you will, an applied study. So we purchased singers masks for those programs. We also purchased musicians masks for middle schools and high schools that have bands. So as soon as they can check the boxes for all 3 of those standards, or whichever ones are applicable to the program, we're back in business. I do want to highlight, though, that all districts in Maryland and across the country have had the same idea about mitigation strategies based on the aerosol study that was produced just a little while ago. So we are experiencing a lot of the things that we've ordered on their back ordered. So in the meantime, I'm just asking for grace as we are trying to make sure that all of our snickerdoodles have what they need.
I appreciate number one, you calling them snickerdoodles, but number two, I think it's important for everyone to hear what you just said, right? The systems, districts all over the country had the same type of put in orders, right? And so a lot of the materials and the resources are on back order, which limits a lot of the opportunity that we really want our students to have immediately. And it's not to say, from what I'm hearing you say, that those materials and resources aren't coming. In some cases, they're just on back order as we've ordered them, as other school systems have ordered, other organizations and folks have ordered that material. So I appreciate you for raising that. That's it for me. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner McFadden. Are there any other questions or comments from my board colleagues? I don't see any hands. Chanel, I just love your passion. I just want to say that this was a great presentation. It was everything that I wanted tonight. So thank you for just your commitment to the arts and your passion. Like Commissioner McFadden, I'm in love with snickerdoodles. On so many levels, but yes, I love that word. And the thing that I was thinking about, and I'm hoping that you can help us pull this off, I was so inspired by the artwork inside of your presentation that I would love to be able to have various slideshows of our young people's artwork before the start of a public board meeting, especially because we're virtual and folks, while they're waiting for the meeting to start, could really enjoy some artwork. So while you were talking, I sent an email to our board executive. I'm hoping that you can help him get his hands on some of the images and more, right? Because we want to be able to have a place for our young people to have their artwork showcased. So that's right. This would not supplant, the performing art that we get to see. This would happen prior, in my vision, it would happen prior to, then we would see the performing art, and then we'd start our meeting.
Chair Richardson, I so appreciate the opportunity to showcase what our snickerdoodles do across the district. So I am happy to put that on my checklist of things to make sure that you have for our board meetings to come. So I look forward to that opportunity. Thank you again for also the opportunity to tell you about the things that we're doing. We don't always get that. So thank you to our CEO, who just goes hard for all of Baltimore City students. And then also for you, our board commissioners who do the same. So thank you for this opportunity.
You're welcome. And I can't wait to get some of those invitations you were speaking about.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. I will now review the consent agenda. So board colleagues, please let me know if you would like an item removed, and please state your question for staff. I am pulling items 8.01, gifts and donations, so that our student commissioner can vote on them. Would any commissioner like to pull that item for questions? Okay, I don't see any hands. So item 8.02, FY21 Q4 budget amendment request. 15, Commissioner McFadden, can you help me with the screen too? Thank you. 15.01, QSS International, Inc. 15.02, Chilmar Corporation. 15.03, Nichols Contracting, Incorporated. 15.04, Nichols Contracting, Incorporated. 15.05, TaylorMade Transportation Services, Inc. 16.01, Hartford Life and Accidental Insurance Company. And lastly, 16.02, BKL and Associates. Okay, thank you. We will now move into public comment. Speakers from recognized groups will have the opportunity to speak for 5 minutes. We do have Chris Ball representing the Baltimore Teachers Union. Is Mr. Ball still on?
Yes.
Say it again. Was that him?
Yes, ma'am, I'm present.
Okay, perfect. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much for having me, Commissioner. Greetings, Commissioners, BTU members, and community. This has been an extremely busy week for BTU members, what with SLOs, standardized testing, formal observations, SLPs, grades, and report cards hammering us all at once. President Brown, fresh from negotiating a historic wage increase for the PSRP chapter, extends a big thanks to our members who are holding the entire system up, and therefore our city and our state. We also give thanks to BTU member Franca Mueller-Paz for being honored in the Baltimore Sun's 25 Women to Watch. Franca spent the past 2 years pushing for safe schools through our ongoing Safe Not Silence campaign, fighting for masks, PPE, regular cleaning, and amplifying student voices for affordable Comcast internet and innovative municipal internet through the SOMOS campaign. Franca's megaphone in mind today on amplifying member voices for better board-driven outcomes. One member this week said, I teach kindergarten and I feel like all my coworker and I have done is give tests like the kindergarten readiness assessments, Amplify for math, iReady, and more for student learning plans. Now we're giving progress, monitoring assessments, math interim assessments, focus, questioning ties, vocabulary assessments, new read assessments, end of module assessments. Need I go on? We haven't had time for small group instruction yet because of all of this testing. Another exasperated member remarked that the SLPs mean nothing because they still took funding away from enrollment, so we can't put services in place to make the plans mean something. And finally, a Baltimore parent shared on social media that what we're asking of teachers right now isn't sustainable. Got out to my husband and to hour 3 of grading, prep, and returning messages earlier this morning. Hours left to go to satisfy the endless paperwork of IEPs, SSTs, SLPs, SLOs, and updating Infinite Campus. Now, October is Depression and Mental Awareness Month. Therefore, we urge the board to create a teaching climate where educators and PSRPs enjoy their work and can feel like it's meaningful education instead of meaningless paperwork and compliance. BTU respectfully requests a meeting in November to discuss workload. The BTU also urges the board to censor or to continue to censor our member self-care and healing rituals by extending wellness days that were recently extended to some of our members at North Avenue. On the first Wednesday of the month, the system closed early and gave staff a wellness half day. Thank y'all. Though many of our members felt that they were not given much advance notice, we acknowledge the district for taking the first step in the right direction in the process of extending more wellness days and hours to our staff members, because social and emotional well-being applies not just to our burnt out scholars, but our burning out member stars. We agree with the student who commented earlier. BTU members need wellness days and students need wellness days as well as families, and we would like them scheduled with enough advance notice so that we can schedule childcare or health appointments on those days and ensure that the services students rely on, like meals and scheduled time with counselors and clinicians, is not canceled without a plan to reschedule or replace those services. Please consider that. Members also urge you to research and adopt a model similar to Richmond Public Schools. Richmond will close on November 1st through 5th as teachers and staff are at risk of burnout, according to Superintendent Jason Comras, who was formerly a National Teacher of the Year and a senior leader in the District of Columbia Public Schools. Our members express support for these type of schedule changes and shifts. The BT urges the district to implement similar wellness opportunities for educators and school-related personnel who are hurting, and we cannot wait to hear Dr. Santelisa's message upcoming about what that will look like, but we also hope that in the future we can work on those initiatives together with Baltimore Teachers Union. Members also urge you to research and adopt practices similar to the Canyon School District in Sandy, Utah. Canyon is a district of 35,000 students where the state superintendent recently created 6 remote learning Fridays to help address staffing shortages and teacher burnout. The superintendent said that, quote, "The goal here is to support teachers and supporting students. Teachers need more planning and collaboration time to ensure students have the resources they need to excel, and students need more time to catch up on unfinished learning." I heard the student scholar saying that early. So we urge the board to support teachers and supporting students by working with the BTU to establish regular wellness days, a wellness week, and more regular remote work days and policies. Finally, in the spirit of supporting educators.
Mr. Ball, you're at time, so just let this be your last sentence.
Okay, my last name is Mr. Bilal. Thank you for that. And I'll just end and say that we still have 9 demands for safe schools that we haven't heard any follow-up from the district on. Those demands are effective and timely close contact protocols, guaranteed PCR testing for follow-ups to positive pool tests, a health and safety coordinator plan that ensures testing of every school every week, testing for vaccinated individuals 3 to 5 days after a close contact exposure, fully staffed nursing suites and wellness rooms, no return of symptomatic students, additional COVID leaves, timely and accurate data in the school's COVID-19 dashboard, surgical masks, not cloth masks, and finally, class coverage compensation. Thank you so much, Commissioner. We hope that you have comments for us, and we hope that you can have a response to our 10 demands, and we want to know what is the earliest date that we can meet around that. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you for your comments. I'll now turn it over to the board executive for public comment.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Our first comment is from Lorraine Coleman, which I'm going to share now. My name is Lorraine Coleman, and I am in the 11th grade at Poly. I am the chair of the Youth Resources Board of Directors. Youth Resources is a youth-led, grant-making, community organizing, and leadership development organization. All grant-making, programmatic, and organizational decisions are made by our Board of Youth and Young Adults. We hire experienced and skilled board members to provide direct organizing and leadership to the board's issue priorities. Priorities include school climate, school police accountability, and mental health/disability awareness. Youth Resources is concerned about the monitoring of the Go Guardian app after school hours and the involvement of school police. We have requested a meeting with Dr. Santelises, school board commissioners, Chief Ham, and any other leadership you believe appropriate. It has come to our attention that City Schools has been monitoring students' laptop using the Go Guardian app. This app monitors student activity during and after school hours and uses add-on software that alerts them when a student may be considering harming themselves. During school hours, if this happens, a school psychologist or social worker is informed so that they can talk to the student. But outside of school hours, at night and during the weekend, these alerts are sent to school police, who make a judgment about whether they need to intervene. They decide whether to call the student's home, and if there's no answer, they are the ones who visit the student's home in person to check what's going on. We believe that this process is inappropriate and has the potential to harm students. We also have questions about how it is paid for. We are requesting a meeting to discuss our questions and concerns raised on our internal discussions with our peers, and with adult advocates. We are requesting more information about the agreement between City Schools and Guardian, what exactly is monitored and when, the process of dispatching school police to students' homes, school police overtime, reallocating resources for an approach that does not involve law enforcement, and identifying resources that are more suited in traumatic situations. Thank you so much for your consideration. Please email Tori Grace, our board secretary, to coordinate a meeting. And just for the benefit of the public, I believe there may be some clarifications or follow-up. Our chief of staff is available with some of the Go Guardian questions.
Yeah, so thanks, Christian. We just wanted to, there was a couple pieces of this that we just wanted to provide some clarifying information on in terms of the after hours process and what that looks like. So I have Deb Brooks here who helps lead this work and was going to talk a little bit about what the after hours process is with regards to Go Guardian.
So, good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Brooks, Executive Director of Special Education, and I just wanted to provide just some clarity on the actual after-hours process. So, again, Go Guardian is definitely I don't want to actually say monitor, but what we actually do both with the Office of Special Education, our clinicians, our school social workers, in collaboration with school police during the school day. I'll first talk about the school day is if there's an alert that goes out that is alarming, where a student may be talking about self-injurious types of behaviors, the school principal is alerted. That information is then shared with the school clinician. The school clinician then meets with the student to have conversations, to provide resources for both the student, alerts the family, has conversations with the family, and puts supports in place for the student. After hours and on the weekends, again, the principal is alerted as well as school police because school police are working. It's not overtime, but school police that are working are also alerted. And then what happens is the school police officer reaches out to the family member, the parent, first to see if they're aware of this, but also to our partners, 211 Maryland, that also provides those mental health resources and supports for the family. School police are not automatically going to the home. So I just want to make that very, very clear. They are reaching out to the family to make sure that the family is aware that a student has posted or gone on a particular site that is somewhat alarming. If the school police are unable to be in touch with the family, then a wellness check, which we've done previous to Go Guardian, we do conduct wellness checks, will go to the home, again, with the supports and resources from 211 Maryland. And those are those mental health and resource supports that are available to make sure that the child is safe, that the family is aware of what may have been posted or alert that has gone out from Go Guardian so that we can make sure those appropriate mental health supports are in place for the child and to make the family aware of what is happening. But again, we are then followed up with the school mental health clinician, the school social worker, so that we can continue those wraparound supports. But in no way is the school police going to the home to put in place any type of anything that's going to be detrimental or harmful to the student, but really is a supportive measure for the child and for the family. So I just want to make sure that that is just really, really clear for the public. Not sure if there were any additional questions or anything else that needed to be followed up on at this time.
No, I think, thank you for the clarification, and we'll be happy to reach out to the students at Youth as Resources to just discuss this further at a later date.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Chief Perkins-Cohen and Director Brooks. Our next public comment is a video from Ms. Jocelyn Providence.
Hello, my name is Jocelyn Providence, and I will be speaking about the Fine Arts Update and Zero Waste Ballpark. First, I want to take a few seconds to say that as someone who will be returning to the classroom in a few days from maternity leave, I am very appreciative of the language that has been added to our teacher contract that requires time and space for pumping. It is great to have universal expectations and an understanding about the needs of lactating parents, and it makes the transition from maternity leave back to the classroom teaching full-time less jarring. I've looked over the slides that are being presented tonight about the Fine Arts Update and have a couple of reflections that I wanted to share with the board. One, I think this push for improving access to the fine arts in BCBSS is long overdue, and I am very happy that it is being brought up. Two, I'm not sure of the timeline for the rollout of this $200 allocation per student, so if that could be clarified, that would be very helpful. Three, on slide 7, it states that this money is going to be used as a one-time spending opportunity for traditional schools, and that guidance for principal will be given to help support long-term benefits of this one-time spending. As many people have always said, but especially our local legend, Dr. Lawrence Brown, author of The Black Butterfly, often states, budgets reflect morals. If we think that a one-time investment in fine arts is enough, what does that say about our value of all students having access to the arts? I have taught at high schools, I have taught in high schools and elementary, middle schools, and BCPSS, and we strongly underfund the arts. One of the high schools that I previously taught at had one art teacher in a school that had a population of over 1,100 students. Like stated on slide 12, arts can definitely be a source of healing for students, but also empowerment. What does it mean if we have been operating schools where students may receive an art class one semester in their entire high school career? This past Friday, there was an action outside of City Hall that made demands to Mayor Scott about the need for compost infrastructure in Baltimore. You may be thinking, Jocelyn, we're the school board. What do we have to do with these actions directed at Mayor Scott? One of the actions that organizers stated that was needed was for anchor institutions to work together to support their compost infrastructure. Anchor institutions like our local universities and local public schools. BCPSS plays a huge role and can help to support this effort by committing to reduce the waste that we are sending to the incinerator and to the landfill. We are still dealing with the COVID health crisis, but this is also a health crisis. According to the Maryland Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, 12.4% of Baltimore City adults currently have asthma, compared to 8.6% nationally. For Baltimore City children under 18 years of age, it is 20%, which is more than twice the national average of 9.4%. We must do right by our students and families and contract with food waste commercial composting services. Thank you.
Hey, Madam Chair, that was it for public comment.
Thank you. I'm going to go back to 8.01, gifts and donations. Ezra, do you have any questions about that item?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Okay. So let's vote on it then. Is there a motion to approve item 8.01?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner McFadden. Is there a second?
Second, Griffin.
Thank you, Commissioner Griffin. All in favor, Commissioner Bondima?
Yes.
Commissioner Chinya?
Yes.
Commissioner Griffin?
Yes.
Commissioner Horwitz?
Yes.
Commissioner James?
Yes.
Commissioner McFadden?
Yes.
Commissioner Reed?
Yes.
And I am in favor. That is 8 in favor with 2 absent. The motion passes. Is there a motion to approve the remaining consent agenda items?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner McFadden. Is there a second?
Second, Bondima.
Thank you, Commissioner Bondima. All in favor, Commissioner Bondima?
Yes.
Commissioner Chinya?
Yes.
Commissioner Griffin?
Yes.
Commissioner James?
Yes.
Commissioner McFadden?
Yes.
Commissioner Reed?
Yes.
And I am in favor. That is 7 in favor with 2 absent. That motion passes. We will now hear an information item on Angela Y. Davis Leadership Academy Program Contract Amendment from Ms. Alvarez and her team.
Good evening, Board of School Commissioners. I'm Angela Alvarez. I'm the Executive Director of the Office of New Initiatives.
Hi, and I'm Trevor Roberts. I'm a specialist in the Office of New Initiatives.
And so tonight we're presenting a request for a contract amendment. That's in the next slide. And so we're asking the board to approve November 9th when we come back, a new agreement between Youth Ambassador Leadership Academy as a wind down to the operation of the Dr. Angela Y. Davis Leadership Academy program, and to transition their expertise to partner with us in a different way. Mainly, they have very strong expertise in supporting and re-engaging students and families. They are great at connecting families to wraparound supports through referrals to other agencies and other community partners that can help with some of the life situations that impact students' ability to be successful and fully engaged within school. And they also provide very strong social emotional programming and mentoring that improves students' connection to schools and readiness for college and career, and just how they think about their path ahead. They help with school students learning about self-advocacy, um, responsible decision making, um, just regulating emotions, and also help in supporting with like some of the other factors that could be stressors for students. And so we think moving forward with this would be helpful. Trevor, you want to share this?
Sure. So just to give a little background on Youth Ambassador Leadership Academy, starting in 2018, they operated the Dr. Angela Y. Davis Leadership Academy program. This was a program that was meant to serve overage middle school students who were 2 or more grade levels behind. And in addition to accelerated learning to get these students back on track to go to high school, the program also focused on the social and emotional health pieces that Angela mentioned, the mentoring, and some of the other services that Angela mentioned in the previous slide. At the time that the program opened, there was a significant number of eligible students for the program, but since that time, based on some changes in the district needs and guidance from the Maryland State Department of Education, the district has been able to reduce the number of overage middle school students, so there is a much smaller population of students eligible for the program. So we would like to transition them away from running a separate program to help students in existing schools who are coming back from personal learning and coming back to in-person instruction, which has created a strong need for partners in existing schools to work on these pieces of re-engagement with school and helping families connect with wraparound services and supports, and to make sure that students who have lost connection with school during the period of virtual learning come back and attend regularly. And so YALA, I think this creates an opportunity for YALA because of their experience providing these supports to build strong relationship with student communities and re-engaging disconnected youth. So we would like to have them continue providing those services in existing schools. So our request is to have them help out in 3 to 5 school communities, which are being chosen based on the concentrations of students who need the additional supports that YALA offers. And the total cost for the agreement, $297,000.
So we recommend the board approve our new agreement with Youth Ambassador Leadership Academy to provide these much needed services to school communities.
Do any of my board colleagues have any questions? All right. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. We will now hear an information item on policy EBCD, delayed openings and emergency closings of schools.
Thank you, Madam Board Chair. This is Allison Perkins Cohen, Chief of Staff for City Schools. I'll be presenting, and with me today I have Joe Strike, who our board liaison, who did a lot of the work on this policy as well as a lot of the engagement. So he'll be here too to add any context about that engagement. And then also I want to acknowledge our Chief Legal Counsel, Josh Sivan, who also did a lot of work on the development of this policy. So the policy that we're reviewing is related to delayed school openings, emergency closures, or early releases for schools. Of course, in the last year and a half, we've had a lot of new ground that we've covered on various reasons why one might close schools that we need to update the policy to reflect. So in light of that, the policy it lays out new procedures for delayed openings and emergency closures, both system-wide and for specific schools. With regard to specific schools, as we continue to make tremendous progress on the air conditioning plan, we've gone from 76 schools when Dr. St. Elisa started to now 21 schools without air conditioning. But as people know, when we have days that are too hot for our students, then we do early releases for the groups of schools that are impacted that are still impacted by the lack of air conditioning. So that would be an example of groups of schools where we do closures, as well as sometimes there might be individual school closures if there's a specific issue impacting a single school, like say a water main break. Then also this revision talks about essential personnel that are expected to work when schools are closed, as well as expectations for non-essential personnel, and then emergency response protocols for delayed openings and closures. So the updating of this policy aligns with two board priorities. Priority 5 related to ensuring equal access to our services, our resources, and our facilities to all our students and the community. And then priority 7 about making sure that we have equity at all levels of our policies and ensuring that we're providing a welcoming environment in our schools. So for the policy changes that we're going to talk about, we have a couple of key changes that we want to talk about. We have added a definition of emergency situations to again talk about kind of the broader range of situations that we now face with regards to potential closures. So, historically it was more attuned to weather-related issues, and that's still in there. There still could be hazardous weather circumstances, snow, tornadoes, that kind of thing. But we also added other definitions like extreme temperatures, also health-related events like pandemics or epidemics, and then facilities-related issues like power failures or lack of heat, lack of water are also other reasons why we might close a school that we've added to that. And also, we wanted to make sure that the CEO or their designee has ability to close or the delay of opening a school or dismiss a school early in the event of an emergency situations that affects one or more specific school communities. Because again, we sometimes have had groups of schools that we need to make a decision about. And then also we wanted to make sure that the CEO or their designee has the authority to shift the entire system, district offices, or a group of schools to do educational learning virtually. It does not require that shift, but it provides the authority to make that shift if the circumstances make sense. So in terms of regulatory changes, there's a couple of key changes that we added here. So under the decision to close schools system-wide and the delay of openings, we wanted to make sure there was language that addresses emergency situations that are caused by the situation inside a school system-wide that impacts the learning environment. And so again, something like buildings that don't have air conditioning would be a good example of that. We also wanted to add language about the early dismissal of schools that allows a broader range of context of why one might do an early dismissal of schools. The prior regulations really talked mostly about travel conditions, but we wanted to make sure that there was also just any emergency situation that was negatively impacting the learning environment and posing a risk to the health and safety of students. So we broadened that a little bit. Then we also put language in to address internal communication procedures to make sure that those are consistent with current practice, that there's language about what is expected for essential and non-essential employees, and that there's now a section related to virtual and remote operation and alternative to closures, which of course, a couple years ago, we wouldn't have thought of that at all. So we've added that now. Here's our typical slide where we go through and talk about some of the feedback that we've heard and ways that we've addressed it. We've done a lot of engagement on this policy, and this is a policy that impacts all our parents, all our students, all our staff, so we want to make sure we're getting people's feedback. So I'm not going to go through all of this, but you know, one is that we're making sure that we're notifying families as soon as we can was one thing we heard, and you know, that's something that parents often express and families and students express that they want to know as soon as possible with any closing. We've added language to make sure that we'll make that effort as soon as possible. It's hard to give a deadline on that because, you know, often you're predicting the weather. It's very hard to predict the weather. And so you really are, you know, you're going to let people, we try to let people know as soon as we can. We do it the night before, whenever we can. But a lot of times that's not possible. So we put language in to make clear that we will do it as soon as we can, but it's hard to give a specific timeline on that. We also wanted to make sure that, again, we broadened it from just health from just the weather alone incidents, which, you know, somebody pointed out was right, that it was more focused on weather and not health. So we added to make sure that it was appropriate to potential health emergencies, since we've all experienced that recently. I'm trying to think what else. We also made sure that somebody wanted to make sure that we're tracking the information about school closures. We really are very aware of the impact on closures of students, on student learning, and we really try not to close schools if we don't have to. But we do, you know, we do report each year on the number of delayed openings and early dismissals and closures for emergency situations, so that we can track that in a way that we're not losing sight of the implications for students on some of the disparities we know exist in our system, like air conditioning. And then in terms of another question was about what is the context in which you make a decision about whether you're closing and switching to virtual. And so we try to give some guidelines about the kinds of things that we would consider. Again, it's not a checklist, but it's the kinds of things we would consider. Like, if we're going to switch to virtual, is there access to technology that's readily available to all of our students? Is there a continuity of learning plan in place for students with disabilities, as well as the potential duration of the shift? So we want to make sure we have some flexibility, but we're also looking at the impact on student learning. And then keeping in mind things like, you know, it may be appropriate to just close schools during, say, a snow day. Snow days, you know, are a break for people, and it's not bad to give people a little bit of an unexpected break. And so we want to keep that in mind too, is to give people that. Everybody needs kind of those refresher days when you get a little break from school. So it's not that we're always going to switch, but we also want to have the ability to switch when it makes sense. So some of the next steps, we've been through the first two steps in this, but today we're doing the first reader. Through November through December, we'll be continuing to do some of the stakeholder feedback we've already done, and we'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. And then December 14th is when it will come back for second reader. In terms of the engagement we've done so far, we've already met with ASCBC on October 12th. We have a focus group scheduled with teachers on November 4th. We've met with a group called Let's Thrive Baltimore on October 18th, and No Boundaries Youth Organization on October 6th. PCAB happened late in September, and then Pizzazza, we're still working on the timeline for, sorry, this looks like a draft slide, but Pizzazza, we're still working on the timeline for that slide and for that meeting. And then the students, we have a survey question that's in the current survey. It's coming up on the next slide. that we're including to get additional student feedback in addition to those focus groups we did, since student voice is really important here. And then lastly, the charter school charter advisory group, we met with them in early September. So this is one of the questions that we're including in our upcoming survey questions, is to get a sense from students about whether they would prefer to switch to virtual learning. And again, giving people the context in that question about, you know, we don't have snow days built into our system. So when we take snow days, it does mean that you're adding another day on the end of the calendar. So we wanted to ask the question in a way that was giving that full context. So we'll see what we get to back to the survey question in the focus groups we've done to date. And Joe can speak to this better than I, because he met with students. But I think we heard very clearly from students that they would much prefer to switch to virtual than either take time from spring break or add time at the end. And I think that is it.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions from my board colleagues? Commissioner Griffin?
Hello. One, thank you so much for this presentation. It was definitely very comprehensive and easy to understand. My question kind of gives way to when you were talking about the differentiation between like a snow day or a day where we're just closed versus a virtual day. Like, is there any guideline or information that will be shared with the public, with students and staff around how that decision is made? Like, what is going to designate when it's kept a snow day or just a day out versus something that would be considered okay to make a virtual day? Because I think understanding that ahead of time might be really good. And then I have a second question, but I'll wait for your answer to that one.
Sure. So some of the language that's in the policy now, and we could bring up the slide that tries to lay out a little bit some of the parameters around would be, we should be, to your point, communicating that with families. So it's things like, you know, do we have the capacity to switch to virtual and have students be able to access their learning that way? I think it's on the next slide, actually, where some of that language is. Yeah. So if you look under the second dark blue section to the right, where when determining whether to shift it virtually to virtual or remote operations, these are some of the considerations. So the accessibility of technology and learning platforms, whether we have the resources to facilitate educational programming and other functions, including the continuity of learning plans, and then the duration. So it's not, so that's the kind of thing that we would communicate to families. Again, it's not a specific formula of when we would do this. I think our goal is as often as we can to keep students, to make sure we're not disrupting education. And I think that duration piece is really going to be important to that. If it's a longer break, then we are very committed to make sure that we're switching to virtual so we don't have further disruption in students' education.
If we had a snowstorm like sometimes we get, that is longer or predicted to be longer, then it'll be understood there's a possibility we may go virtual for part of that time that folks may be out.
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
So we all could understand. My second, it's really a comment when it comes to the student surveys. I was curious if we are planning to include the link to that, or is it accessible for students, say in the student forum that we're about to have?
So it's going out. So it's mentioned here as a pulse survey, but I don't know if Tina or if Chief High Cupboard or Chief Jones is here to talk about when the survey is going out. It's going out soon, and I don't think it's out yet where we can provide a link.
Okay, because that would have been an opportune time when we had students gathered in the space, you know, discussing different things. It would have been great to be able to give them a link to access that, and you would have a nice bit of students' answers already. So just something that we want to think of, I think, ahead of time when we're planning to do some of this work is where are the spaces where we're going to be engaged with students and in a single space that we can take the opportunity to get their feedback.
Oh, you mean for the forum next week? Sorry. So let me find out for that for the forum whether I can give specific information by then of when that would be, what the link is, and the hope is to get these answers back well before second reader so that we can incorporate any feedback in the second reader.
If I can just jump in quickly, the student forum, we are in the process of finalizing the student survey. The plan was for it to go out the first week of November, so the timing wasn't perfect, but let me see if we can figure that out. But the idea is to have the survey go out in student advisory. So it isn't something extra students have to do outside of school, but actually can do it during the school day. So we're hoping to get we moved from that strategy in the end of the year survey last year. We went from 600 kids completing it to 5,000 kids completing it. So that's our strategy for now. Just the timing didn't work out, but I don't know if that's possible. I'll check with Chief Jones and see if that's something we can figure out.
Thanks, Chief Highcover.
Commissioner McFadden.
Thank you. In the event that we still have food provided, meals provided for our students and their families during inclement weather, would any of those staff be considered essential?
So we go through a process where we identify staff who are essential before, there's a way that you can identify staff before the winter weather of who's essential. And we usually identify a group of schools that, not all, but in the past few years prior to COVID, we had 4 usually schools in a school in each quadrant where we would serve meals if there was a prolonged period when schools were closed. So we will have that conversation again. I will say one of the things we weigh with that is that and I have to look at the most recent numbers, but it's a very small number of families that come out for those meals. And we've had times when we've served a meal when we've done that. So it gets to a question of, whether we're opening the site to provide such a small number. So I will check in with Liz Marchetta, our Chief of Food and Nutrition, our lead of Food and Nutrition, to check in to see what we want to do this year. But that's what we've done in the past. It just has been a very small number of families generally that take advantage of that because it's usually a bad weather day, and so people aren't really going out.
Appreciate that. And the same thing that I had in committee about principals being considered essential employees, I would still like to hear more of a compelling correlation between them being essential, them being in the buildings when other staff is not. And this doesn't have to happen now, but probably before second reader. And then how we identify or specify the use of liberal leave, right? So are you going to now?
So in terms of the essential, why principals need to be there is that, generally when we're talking about a system-wide closure, it's often a weather event like a snow event. And we need somebody to be there to make sure that the school has properly been cleared out, the sidewalks are clear, the pathways up to the school are clear, and to make sure that we do the parking lots, but that somebody has gotten there to clear the parking lots so we can open the next day. If there's not somebody there, they don't do the clearing. Custodians are essential workers as well, so they're doing the work. But you need somebody there who's the leader of the building to make sure that the building is ready to be open the next day so that we can be open for students. That's why they're there. Liberal leave, when liberal leave is granted, it means that you can take leave without having prior approval from your supervisor to take leave.
And we're going to require them to be present. I know that it will be case sensitive, but we would require them to be present for the full day.
So what we generally require, again, it somewhat depends on the weather circumstances. I mean,
So you can lock it in.
So it depends somewhat on the weather circumstances, but if we're having essential employees report, then we need them to be there again to make sure the school is ready to be open the following day. If that work is done in time, I think, I think often we let school staff leave once that's done, but that is an important function that's why they need to be there to make sure it's really ready. And we've been in situations in my time in this position where we've been unable to open schools on the second day because they were not ready, because the pathways were icy, they hadn't been cleared properly, and that's a problem. We're missing more instructional time because schools were not made properly ready, and it takes the school leader in my opinion, it should be the school leader's responsibility to ensure that it's ready for the next day.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay, thank you so much, Allison, for your presentation.
Thank you.
I'm going to go over our upcoming meetings. We have our Fall Youth Board Forum. It's a virtual meeting that is happening tomorrow, the 27th, from 4 to 5:30 p.m. We're really excited about that meeting. We have our joint legislative town hall, which is also a virtual meeting, on Thursday, October the 28th, from 5 to 7 p.m. We have our Teaching and Learning Committee meeting, a virtual meeting, on Tuesday, November 2nd at 3:30. Our executive session meeting is here at 200 East North Avenue, and that will be Tuesday, November the 9th. Following that would be our public board meeting, November the 9th at 5 p.m. Our Operations Committee meeting is a virtual meeting, and it will be held Tuesday, November 16th at 10:30 a.m. Our policy committee meeting is a virtual meeting, and it will be held Tuesday, November 16th at 3:30 p.m. And our fall budget priorities board hearing, which is also a virtual meeting, will be held Tuesday, November 16th at 6 p.m. We are hoping that you all will be able to join us for one or all of those meetings. It is 7 p.m. And we will now have an opportunity for board members and the CEO to engage in conversation, highlighting any issues or events that you'd like to elevate. The floor is wide open for any of my colleagues or for the CEO if you want to engage in conversation.
Madam Chair, I would like to just see if Commissioner Horwitz has any updates from students, any updates as it relates to tomorrow's forum. I'd be eager to hear from you tonight about any concerns, Commissioner Horwitz, if you have them. Not to put you on the spot, but if you have them, I think it's always great to hear from our students.
I would say that, is there an echo? Okay. I would say, I still hear an echo. So I would say that my only concern is I have not heard any information from my fellow peers about the youth forum, which makes me believe that they are unclear if it is going on. Could someone give me an update on how these emails or robocalls are coming out and how we're providing information to the stakeholders about its occurrence? Because I have not heard any information about it from my peers at school.
Is there anyone from staff or the CEO, anyone can talk about Commissioner Horwitz's concern with communicating to students about tomorrow's forum?
Yep, this is Chief I Covered here. We have had Andre Riley and the comms team in every planning meeting that we've had. So we have reached out to emails to students and whatnot. So I'm concerned that they're not receiving them, and we're actually doing that outreach along with Instagram and other social media and our website. So I will look into that this evening and make sure we get a push out tonight if students are saying they're not receiving them, because that should have already happened.
Okay, it could also just be them it could also just be them not specifically talking about the meetings, as I do not know exactly what's causing them not to discuss it. That means I'm not authorized to comment on if I know people are getting the emails or not. But I will say that if they are not getting the emails, which I am not sure about, then that would be something to discuss. But I have heard recently that they sent out that information about the youth forum from Christian today. So that's important.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Horowitz. I'm having a hard time hearing. I just want to, just at the end.
Pick it up and put it like right there. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, of course, of course. My comment was, even though I have not heard information about who is going to attend the meeting, that could possibly just be them not talking about the meeting in general. And I heard from Christian today that he sent out information about the meetings coming up. So that's really important to note. And thank you for the clarification.
I just want to clarify. I was just repeating what I heard from comms that the robocall was going out.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I was referring to. The robocall was sent out to the students and to the parents also today at 4:30. Thank you.
Christian, I failed to hear the last part of what Commissioner Horowitz said. What was the last thing that you just said? For context, I have this thing in my ear.
No, I'm so sorry. I will go louder. I totally understand. I mentioned today that the robocalls for the parents and students were sent out in terms of the youth forum tomorrow, and that the parent one was sent today at 4:30 p.m.
Right, and I was just saying that's what Ezra asked me about it. When I talked to our communications department, I was just relaying what I was told. So that was the clarification. Yes, because we guys have been in contact about it. So I was just relaying that information. But like Chief Hike Hubbard said, she's going to look into it.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you for raising that, Ezra. Thank you for raising that. Are there any other topics? Commissioner Reed?
I guess for me, transportation seems to be a tough sledding. How are we now in terms of, I guess the first 14 days were pretty tough. How are we now in terms of getting traction and getting the level of dissonance down?
Sure. So with regards to transportation, I'll start, but if either Jacinta Hughes or Chief Washington is on the call, that would be helpful because they'll have more detail around that. But I will say, one, the team has worked incredibly hard to find creative solutions. So creative solutions with cabs, but that's been challenging this year. They have really cut down the number of students that were unrouted since the beginning of the school year. The actual shortage has not abated any, and we have been talking about other, working with other incentives for drivers based on what we know is occurring in the market, just to put it bluntly, at the state level, in surrounding jurisdictions. So we've been, the team, Chief Grant Skinner in Human Capital, as well as Chief Washington and Ms. Hughes have been working on really trying to incentivize more based on what we know that market is. And what I would say is the team's done yeoman's work, and I got an update yesterday. I just want them to be able to add some of the, some of the additional, work that we've done. But the reality is, it's not covering everything. We still have an over dependence on contractors, but a lot of some of those contractors have really stepped up and helped. And I think with others, they're going through the same struggles around personnel and call outs that others are. I think the good news is we've reduced at least by half the number of unrouted students, more than half at this point. But it is still challenging. And every day, every once in a while, we'll get a call that one contractor has a number of call outs. And because of just how tight everything is in terms of staffing, all it takes is a major call out from one contractor, and we're again having to call parents, again have delays. So I reviewed some proposals from the operations team yesterday that we're working through, but it's an ongoing challenge. And I would just, because I do see Ms. Trueheart's notation in the chat, I just want to remind everyone that if you are not receiving robocalls, to please make sure we have your accurate phone information at city schools. We still average about 50% or more of phone numbers are not active. So just make sure we have your most up-to-date information to help us, really try to reach as many people and to keep our records updated, because we know that things happen, families move, you've got to, I lose cell phones, so, that might mean I need to get a new number, but it's just really important for us to have updated information.
Do that,
Yeah,
Dr. Santelica.
I received 2 since I've been in this room. I got 2 robocalls.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, Commissioner Griffin.
I was just saying, how can they make sure that the city schools has their most up-to-date information? Like, where would they go?
Let's see. So there's a couple places. Well, the first place is make sure your school has it, because that's the major kind of feeder to our system for those numbers. And it's the one that you're most likely, right, to make sure that it gets uploaded. We get our information from the schools.
Thank you. I did have a question or a thought too that was bubbling up, if I could. Yeah. Okay.
Yes,
I was
go ahead.
thinking. Oh, thank you. I know it's delayed. I was thinking about 2 things. One, just like, understanding globally what's happening with supply chain issues. I was curious if there's anything to share about either, like, one, how we're mitigating that, and or the impact that it's been having on city schools, because I know that it's being felt globally, like that it's not isolated to just us here. But I was curious if we could talk a little bit about that. And then the second one is a little quicker. It's really just about proactive measures we've been taking for heating. We're heading into November, and we know, thank goodness we've been able to replace and also, like, have some newer systems put into schools. But I was just curious around any proactive measures to ensure, like, our students will be warm this winter.
Sure. No, thank you, Commissioner, for your question. So first, with regards to supply chain issues, those are impacting, everything. It's like everyday life. So we had a forum with young people around, and shout out to Councilwoman Ramos for her, giving space to young people. Supply chain issues are hitting everything from school lunches to the cost of construction, to the delivery of technology. So literally, when you think about any kind of, quote, product that a school would use, it's impacting us. It's actually also impacting some of our plans, like kind of future capital plans as well, because the projected increase is much higher than that. So that, that's an issue as well. I think what we're doing to mitigate it is we've done earlier orders. We have menu options, so it just depends on which area you're talking about. I would also just add, and not that this is directly related to supply chain as we traditionally think of it, but I think this is also an important time to really point out some of the human supply, for lack of a better term, that we're also experiencing. So, I don't have any argument about the need, for example, for increased mental health and behavioral supports in schools. We've actually put aside the money for that. It's not an issue of the money. It's an issue of having people to hire. It's the same thing we were just talking about with bus drivers. So what we're seeing is that in some of those critical positions, I had a town hall with a number of members from our Latino communities this past week, and they were asking, like a lot of parents, about nurses and crossing guards. And so, we don't traditionally think of that as supply chain because those are human beings. But when we talk about like the source of expertise, we're also seeing a shortage in those areas. So, one of the stories I tell is I was crossing between Roland and Northern Parkway. There was no crossing guard that day because, again, we have a supply. So literally, as the CEO, I'm using my car to block traffic as I'm directing kids across, outside my window because, you had middle schoolers, and this, Commissioner Griffin, who weren't doing anything wrong. They were just being kids, right? They were just being like little, what did Chantel call them? Little snickerdoodles, right? They were just being snickerdoodles. They weren't doing anything wrong, but I'm like clutching my chest because, they're on the side of the street. So, I had to stop, direct them across. And when I called Jacinta, who I know she's here, and I said, Jacinta, oh my God, I just stopped. I had to cross kids across the street. And she said, we've got a shortage. So I think it's important that in communities, if you have people who might be interested in these positions, that's just as important as, the supply chain for food and computers. So I think it's important to see both of them. But I know that Executive Director Hughes is on, and so is Chief Washington, even though she can't turn on her camera. So I'm going to give just a little space also for that preparedness question for winter that you asked. So Chief, are you on?
I'm on. Apologize, I can't turn on the camera. But just as a follow-up for the preparedness for the winter, we're definitely prepared. So we've been doing probably since sometime in September, we've been doing a lot of preventative maintenance work in our schools. And so that's where we go in and we start fixing things such as our univents and some of our other heating equipment that needs to be ready. So we've been able to use a lot of our state dollars. So there's been some state dollars that had been made available for us to fix equipment. So we've been using some of those dollars. And so I will say that our schools will be ready in preparation for when we start turning on heat. Right now, we're in turnover period, which means that we will slowly be turning off the air conditioning in our facilities and turning on the heat. So for our facilities that are non-AC facilities, that work has been happening during the summer because they don't have air conditioning. For those facilities that are air-conditioned facilities, documents have been going out to principals, and principals will soon be communicating to families that the heat will be going on in those buildings. And so much of that work and fixing systems and units and different things like that has been happening so that between the next 2 weeks, we can turn on the heat in our buildings.
I appreciate you giving that that update and just letting everybody know what's happening with our systems and even like understanding the process that goes behind it. That's really helpful. Thank you, Chief Washington.
I also, Chief Washington, did you mention that we now have remote temperature monitoring capability that we did not have my second, I think, winter?
Yes.
Could you talk about that a little bit, ma'am?
Yes. And so we have remote monitoring sensors, and it's something that we actually have been using since the summer. And so the sensors basically gives us an understanding of what's the temperature is within our buildings. And so during the summertime, it is helpful. So if there is a situation where a building that is an AC building is having problems in that facility, the temperature alerts will go out to a building repair person to alert them that the system is off, right? If the classrooms are heating up, it means that the system is not operating. And so we can send out a technician well before school starts at 6 o'clock in the morning in order to get that system back online. So it's the same systems that we use during the winter time, so that if temperatures begin to drop in a particular classroom space, let's say that the system goes offline at 9 o'clock at night, an alert will go out to a building repair person. And that is one of the challenges that we had back in 2018. We did not know all of our systems were offline. And so now we have these sensors that are remote that send out alerts to alert us that a system is offline, that classroom space is cold. And so therefore we can send teams out to go out and resolve the situation before students arrive. And so therefore you're not having an impact during instruction time and the building is already operating and heating because our systems are still old. So for those systems that are not brand new, it's good to have an alert system to let us know what's happening in the building overnight and early in the morning time. So that is something that's going to be really helpful for us.
Awesome. That's exciting to hear about that update and just the efficiency of it, you know, and helping to make sure that buildings are well taken care of, especially when we're thinking about temperature in classrooms and buildings. So thank you.
Commissioner Griffin, Commissioner McFadden and I were just sitting here reminiscing about our very first board meeting. So we were sworn in and we came into this room right here, and it was right after the Cole buildings. And boy, oh boy, what an introduction, right? And so to hear what Chief Washington is saying now from just our very first meeting, it is phenomenal what the staff has been able to do. Just stringing together peanuts, really, but have been able to really move the system in a way more efficient way. So I'm very pleased. Commissioner Chinya.
I'm not going to talk about the heat or the cold, but in the vein of the safety, since I believe next weekend is the weekend when time changes, and I know that we aren't meeting before then. I'm hoping that something is going out to folks because it will be dark earlier. And so just to be certain that parents are aware of that, as well as schools and students.
No, thank you for that, Chair Chinya. And I think what we can do is make sure that's part of communications. And in addition to, you know, other items this week for my weekly video, I will make sure now, I will tell you it wasn't originally going to be in there, but I think it's a great suggestion. And I'll make sure that I add that in my weekly video addressed to the district. It's a great idea. Thank you.
Any other commissioner have anything?
I said my last one was a long time ago, but I'm sorry. Earlier, Dr. S., you spoke to me in the group about the whole, I guess the discourse was the importance of having kids in the building because of your concerns on mental health. Can you speak to that again for the greater population in terms of how important that is to you, why we need the kids to be in our face, so to speak, because of the concerns they have?
Yeah, no, thank you, Commissioner Reed. And I think, you know, you actually in your last phrase that you used, you know, having kids in our face, it actually, in a real direct way, captures why it was important to have young people be able to connect in person, right? It was never just about the building for the building's sake. It was about young people having the kinds of experiences that happen with prolonged isolation, prolonged absence from school, the fact that there are many nationwide and around the world that are saying we still do not know the full impact of the extended time away from connections for a lot of young people. Again, I've been out in schools speaking with teachers and principals and young people themselves. And one of the things that's very clear is that young people have experienced, right, a variety and a range of challenges since their time away. And it can be as simple as just, I'm not used to the routine of doing school anymore, all the way to what one of our community partners said to me early this morning. And he said, Dr. S., we have young people who have had more adult grown-up experiences over the last 19 months than they had before, and they are bringing that back into our schools. And this is somebody who is not just school-based. This is somebody who, you know, has relationships with young people outside of school and leverages that to be able to support them in school. And so one of the things that is true is that, you know, teachers are saying, like, look, to be able to do lesson plans and address some of those needs for young people is a heck of a lot to be asking just teachers. And even, as I noted earlier, the fact that, you know, we absolutely have put aside the money and the funds to expand behavioral health teams, but you can't just rely on an already short supply of school psychologists. We opened those positions months ago, and you don't have people who are ready, you know, as we were talking earlier, you know, to hop into cars and go address kids in crisis, right, at the same time. So you need an expanded, you know, community to do that. And so I think the opportunity we have is creating the space for people who see the holistic needs of young people to be in place to use school as geographical proximity to bring those resources together. But it is why, and one of the things I've said before, is I didn't want kids just back in buildings because there's something magical about buildings, but it is about relationship. What Chantel presented earlier, we know to be true. Sorry, Chanel. Chanel will love me anyway. I know, that's what it is. That's why I'm like, who's the Chantel? It's Commissioner Roberts. Thank you, Commissioner McFadden. And Chanel knows I love her. But like part of why we've worked really hard is because like arts are healing for some kids, right? Sports are healing. Not everything is like this deluge of trauma, and so I need to get you a psychologist. For some kids, that healing happens because I get to touch a trumpet again, because I get to run track again, because I get to sing in a collective community that brings joy. And so this is not about problematizing kids, but it is about providing the resources that they need, even in the face of shortages of mental health providers, but at the same time knowing that the community and being together is that healing. When I was over at Forest Park the other day, that is a high school community that has figured out how to put processes and procedures in place so that young people know that the structures are there to give them a sense of safety, but they also still have space, which you could see in their advisory period. So it's a combination of things. And I think we have underestimated like the power of community and being together. And being virtual was not that way for every student. And I know, because I've said before and I'll say again, my three daughters, a lot of what brought them back was being back in community, not like only going to a psychologist or psychiatrist. It's not like that's the only way people heal. And so we've got to be able to, and that's why we're committing the Kerwin dollars the way we are. But this, the mental health, the behavioral health, every time I go into a building, that's what teachers are talking about, principals are talking about, and that's where we have to give the support. But we can't act as if, oh, there's nothing special about being back in a building. No, there's nothing special about being back in a building, but there is something special about being part of community. And being part of community matters. And that's why we invested all that we did in testing and all the other mitigation, because it does make a difference. And we're seeing it in the lives of our kids. So that's what I said.
I think I have my hand up. Thank you, Dr. Sansalisa. This is Bundima. I just want to add another dimension to what you said that we talked about before, and everything that you're saying is true. We all have our opinions about what we should do, but it all goes back to what you were saying. But one thing that I want to reiterate that I brought up before, when we had a lengthy discussion about health care, and the issue is that we have such a great shortage of healthcare providers. And from the higher education where I teach nurses and I teach healthcare people, is such a shortage. And when we talk to people in the community, we hear stories about we don't have a nurse at our school, well, we don't have one full-time at our school. And it's not about the fact that we aren't searching, it's about the fact that nationally and internationally, and because of the pandemic, but before the pandemic, we had a great shortage of healthcare providers, especially in the area of nursing. And when I'm speaking to people in the public and they're saying, why don't we have a nurse at the school? And all you can say is, we don't have them there because we don't have nurses. We don't have healthcare providers, social workers. It's such a shortage, and it's very difficult for people to understand that. And what I say to them, please tune into our board meetings and hear us speak about why we don't have shortage and what we're doing about it, so that you can share it with other community members and stakeholders. And I just want to mention that again, because as a person that spent 32 years teaching healthcare providers, I'm telling you, before now and years ago, it was always a shortage. So we're going to be the last one to be able to grab onto some of these healthcare providers before the hospitals and the community healthcare, like universities, snatch them before we can get them. But I'm so happy you talked about that a little bit, because we need to send that message out to the people who are in the community, why we have such a shortage. But thank you.
And if there's any way that they can also support us in identifying folks to come in, because I think what's important about what we're talking about here is, like, this is what the reality is. These are the things that City Schools is doing to try to fix it, and we still need more support in this area because we understand how important it is. At the same time, like, that's what I heard everyone saying, but I just want to reiterate it clearly so folks hear that as well.
Right.
It's like, yes, that too.
They have to understand that the nurses have to be educated. They have to go through the educational system to become a nurse. They have to get clinical experiences. It's not like we can go 4 years of college and become a teacher and go take our tests, take our exam, our certification. You have to want to be in that environment. And that's what, as talking to nurses all the time and what's going on out there with the pandemic, it is very, very difficult, very difficult. But we have to keep trying. So,
Thank you so much, Commissioners Griffin and Bondima. Commissioner Chinya?
I'm just adding an advertisement to what they're saying to our students who may be considering careers and what they'd like to do as the future, because we do offer in our programs nursing. So there you are. There's some great positions, great jobs to have that will give you a great wage.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
That is a great comment that we will end this evening on. Thank you all so much. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved by Dima.
Thank you, Commissioner Bondima. Is there a second?
So move, Reed.
Thank you, Commissioner Reed. Is there anyone that is not in favor, that opposes or abstains from that motion? Then we are all in favor. We will adjourn. Thank you to the public for joining us tonight. We will see you next time. Good night.